From a highly secure network of top secret locations across North America, this is the Spurs Insider post-draft edition. I'm your host, Mike Finger, joined as always by our panel of Express News Spurs beat writers, Jeff McDonald and Tom Orsborn, who I had to cut off when we started this podcast because they get along so well. They're talking about the draft. They're talking about Jeff's travels to New York City. They're talking about Dylan Harper and Carter Bryant. And I just wanted to jump right into this. Jeff, you were there. You were at what you said is a lovely hotel there in Manhattan. What is your takeaway from what the Spurs did in a busy first night of the 2025 NBA draft?
Well, you know what? I've covered almost 20 of these now, and never once has the GM come out after the draft night and said, "Boy, we screwed that up."
Yeah,
that was a really bad draft for us. It's always the most optimistic night of the year, but I think this time that they're not blowing smoke. I think they had if the Spurs could have sat down beforehand and drawn out a reasonable scenario for what they wanted to get out of the draft. They got the two guys that they wanted at those spots at 2 and 14. Obviously, Dylan Harper, that was kind of a foregone conclusion after the Spurs made it to draft day still in possession of the number 2 pick. And with Carter Bryant, who I guarantee you I'm going to call Bryant Carter at some point this year because I can't get those the two names in the right order. With him, the Spurs were thinking they were going to have to try to trade up for him. They had him very high on their draft board, the forward from Arizona. Didn't end up making a deal to trade up, but he fell to them anyway, and they were pleasantly surprised. So I think you can say they got their men last night, and it wasn't the normal draft night braggadocio. It was it's legit.
and like you said in your wizened battle-hardened way to start that soliloquy, like every GM says that too. Like when every GM that picks after the first pick said we nearly tried to trade up to get this guy. Like every GM says that. In this case, though, you can look at many mock drafts that had Carter Bryant going in the top 10, or at least ahead of number 14. It's not unthinkable that he could have been gone before he got to the Spurs at 14. And in some ways, Tom, I think a theme of this draft, or just like the overall story of this draft for the Spurs, is it's kind of one pick from the new column of these picks the Spurs have made the last 3 years of guys that everybody wants, guys that can immediately come in and make a difference. I think Dylan Harper it fits the mold, not necessarily the franchise star that Victor Wembanyama was, but certainly of Wembanyama and Stephon Castle. Now Dylan Harper, top 5 picks that are expected to play right away, expected to be a difference maker. And then there's a pick from the old box, the kind of picks that the Spurs were making, say, throughout the 2010s, of guys that might need a little seasoning, that might not step in right away, but kind of have the ability to, or at least give the Spurs the ability to wait on them and really turn into something down the line. If you watch the NBA Finals this season between the Indianapolis Pacers and the Oklahoma City Thunder, the court is just constantly loaded with guys who can defend everybody and who can make 3-pointers. And young Carter Bryant fits that mold. He might not play right away, but I think Jeff is right when he said that it's a guy that really fits and could be a big factor for them down the road.
Yeah, and just want to say the Pacers represent the whole state of Indiana, not just one city of Indianapolis. But
so is it the Oklahoma Thunder then? They don't represent the entire state. They just represent the
well,
city.
you said Indianapolis Pacers.
Yeah. Well, they're from Indianapolis.
You're right. I'm just giving you a hard time, Mike.
Okay.
But yeah, Brian pointed out too. I asked him about the, the criticism or concern, I should say, that people have had about, position overlap with Harper with Steph Castle and De'Aaron Fox and crowded backcourt and all that stuff. And he once again, reiterated his often repeated theme that it's a positionless league right now. It just doesn't matter as much. And they got two guys that are very versatile. I think both of them can guard, four positions. Carter Bryant certainly can. And they're very happy about that. And they've been doing that for years now. They aren't looking at positions. They're going with the best players that they think can, produce the most. And they certainly got two of them last night in their minds. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the positionless thing that definitely fits on defense. The question will come on the other end, because when you have multiple ball dominant type of guys, that's where you can't really say it's positionless, because somebody has to have the ball in their hands with the game on the line, all that kind of stuff. But I think that has a chance of working out pretty well for them, Jeff. In talking about Harper, he's a guy who the Spurs wanted. He's a guy who other teams wanted. One storyline heading into this draft season, really. I think we've known for a few weeks that the Spurs were going to take Dylan Harper and hold on to that pick. But that was a pick that other teams wanted, that other teams made efforts to try to get that pick from them, trying to say that, hey, there's too much redundancy there, that you have too many ball dominant guys already. Why didn't you like to trade down? The Spurs resisted that. They really seem to believe that Dylan Harper does fit, and they hung on to that pick. Just what's your takeaway there?
That they're betting on the talent there, and which I applaud that move. I mean, I'm a nobody. I'm not a draft scout, but when you talk to people that are, they really think Dylan Harper has a chance to be a really, really special player. Just a force going to the rim, and not just those like early Keldon Johnson years where he would just put his head down and go. Like, that's not Dylan Harper's game. He's very crafty. When you watch some of his, I don't want to put this on the kid, but when you watch some of his highlights, he looks Ginobili-esque with the way he's able to kind of work his way to the rim, slither around people, the craftiness, the footwork. He's a basketball kid, and we know his history. His dad's Ron Harper, 5-time NBA champion. His brother's in the league, and he really credits his mom as being the basketball sort of savant in the family. She's the one that coached him since he was in the first grade at various levels. So he's a guy that knows the game, and then off the court is very, I talked to both those draft picks yesterday, and you don't know everything about a kid, obviously, when you talk to him for 5 minutes, but you can get a vibe. And both those kids seem very polished and comfortable in their skins, and kind of like we said with Steph Castle last year, you don't really realize they're 19 when you're talking to them. And so I think all those things are going to play really well for Dylan Harper. I think he's going to fit in great. I think will probably be the type of guy that if you didn't take him at number 2, if the Spurs had traded that pick, you look back in 5 years or 10 years and realize that was pretty dumb. So I think they did the obvious, easy, smart thing and took the best player on the board there.
One kind of weird vibe phenomenon kind of thing that sets in after you have drafted Victor Wembanyama and then drafted another rookie of the year the next year, and when you haven't won in a long time, and then you have the number 2 pick of the draft, is people sort of forget how big a deal it is to have the number 2 pick in the draft. It's almost like, and I don't want to speak for all the listeners out there, I don't want to speak for Spurs fans everywhere, but it's almost like there's this impatience. It's like boredom with getting another franchise type player in the draft. When we were guilty on this podcast of talking about Kevin Durant. There's all kinds of trades out there, and I think this is the summer where everyone's antsy, understandably, for the Spurs to make a big type move to get a veteran in here and to start competing for conference championships and NBA championships. it's almost, and maybe I'm the only one guilty of this, but it's almost like you lose sight of the fact that having the number 2 pick and a draft this loaded is a really big deal. And like Dylan Harper, if how many other teams in the league, if they would have drafted Dylan Harper yesterday, would immediately expect that he's going to become their franchise player if he's not their franchise player already. Like it's a huge, huge deal to get a guy like that. And just he just happens to be joining a team that already has a couple of franchise players of the future. But for the Spurs to hold on to that pick, to resist the overtures, as Jeff said, I think it was a wise long-term move and probably a pretty decent short-term move. We can talk about this. We got plenty of time today. Just how this team is shaping up for 2025, 2026. Dylan Harper's going to play. I don't think he's going to start. If we want to start playing like fantasy lineup manager right here, I still think you have the starting 5 that started right after the De'Aaron Fox trade. I think that's how you open the season with Fox, Vassell, Castle, Barnes, and Wemby. But Harper can come in and play a lot of minutes leading that second unit, and yeah, I think it's very fair to think that this team takes another step forward next year, Tom.
Got a little work to do, as Brian pointed out last night, though. Still,
I mean, let's go down the lineup. That I just mentioned the starting lineup. Your reserves right now, I think you have 4 very four backups that you feel comfortable playing a lot of minutes in Harper, in Keldon Johnson, Julian Champagny, and Jeremy Sohan. That's 4 guys there. The obvious hole is size. You need a backup big man. You might need a couple backup big men. But I mean, they've got 9 guys, Jeff, who I feel comfortable in a rotation.
Yeah, they're building this thing out now. You can kind of see the vision. And like you mentioned, there's still holes. There's going to be holes. I think where some of the antsiness gets in among parts of the fan base is you gotta realize it doesn't have to be a finished product after this summer. Like, you want to take steps towards that finished product, but they're not rolling out a roster after this summer going like, yep, this is our team we're going to try to win a title with right now. That's not the way it works. Like, they still got years to build this thing out, and they're getting closer to the kind of vision that they're that they have. And so
was like, go ahead.
I think you'll see them look for some additional size during free agency. I think you'll see them look for some more shooting during free agency. They didn't super address either of those needs in the draft yesterday. I think Carter Bryant can be your shooter. I don't know that he's that in year 1, but I think that's what they see him as a guy that can hit 40% from 3 and defend everybody.
And you need a bunch of those guys.
So I think he does help. He will eventually help address that need. I don't know how much he plays in year 1. But I think there are other tools for addressing needs besides just the draft, and you still don't have to do it all at once. I know fans want the finished product right now, but it's still a couple years away, I think.
And to your point, this whole summer so far has been a reminder that they see this as a long-term project, and that they expect to contend for many, 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 many years to come. And Carter Bryant fits that. I mean, he's not a guy that is going to be plug and play right away, but he can make a big difference when the Spurs start to peak. And let's go back to the Durant thing, because we talked about that in our last podcast. We have not met since. It sort of worked out like we discussed on that podcast, where we came up with a line that the Spurs probably would not cross. And if you look at the deal that Houston made to acquire him, it was a deal that slightly beat precisely the offer that we made on the podcast, which I believe was something like Devin Vassell and Harrison, the matching salaries, Devin Vassell and Harrison Barnes, plus the number 14 pick. And that's basically it and maybe some seconds for Kevin Durant. And that's almost what the Rockets did. They had a slight upgrade with Jalen Green instead of Devin Vassell, who the stock on him might be a little higher. their pick was number 10 instead of number 14. The Spurs could have easily trumped that by adding a Stephon Castle, by adding, let's say, the Atlanta Hawks first round pick in 27, another future first. The Spurs did not do that because they're thinking long term, and so the deal was made to the team that made more sense, the Houston Rockets. Just either one of you guys, any thoughts on the Spurs kind of steering away from that deal, kind of drawing a line in the sand that they would not cross, and moving on to the future?
I think trading for Kevin Durant makes a lot of sense for the Houston Rockets, who are a little bit further along in their little rebuilding project than the Spurs are. Like, he is a guy that can, ostensibly take them to the next level, maybe, or at least that's what they're thinking. I don't think the Spurs are really in that position yet. And so it was almost a luxury item. And how much do you want to give up for a luxury item? It wasn't a need, it was a want. I think it was, again, probably a wise move, because it was going to cost you either Steph Castle or the number 2 pick. And I think with what they're building, I don't think they were interested in giving up either one of those assets. And when those are flat nose, it becomes just kind of a no thank you from the Suns, and they move on. So I think that I think the deal makes sense for the Rockets. Didn't make as much sense for the Spurs, and I think the team that it made the most sense for made the best offer.
Yep. And I think I referenced this earlier, but just the push from teams lower in the draft to try to get that number 2 pick, Philadelphia, whoever it might be, the Spurs resisted that too. And you did cover that. You think that Harper is well worth whatever might have been offered from the Sixers to move down a pick.
Yeah, I think that the wise move was to take Dylan Harper and let him cook.
Yep. Sounds good. Tom,
Dylan Brooks gone. Wemby, I mean, he's not gone from the league, but that defense that Udoka employed against Wemby with Dylan Brooks on him, that was a pain a little bit for Wemby. So he doesn't have to.
That'll be a new facet to that budding rivalry.
Right. Yeah.
You don't figure that the Phoenix Suns are going to be quite as in the Spurs way as the Rockets were. So Wemby might have been breathing a sigh of relief there.
Yeah, I like the Brooks factor in that rivalry. I thought that was fun.
Yeah. The Thunder, while we're talking about rivalries, who the Spurs see as as maybe their chief nemesis in the decade.
The Oklahoma Thunder.
The Oklahoma Thunder. That's that they took their step. And I think to get into what the Spurs are doing this summer, Sam Presti, who we saw roaming the hallways of the Alamo Dome 20-something years ago, Tom, just the kid in the glasses who walked by. I might have told the story in the podcast before. I'm just a young nothing, and as opposed to an old nothing as I am today. Walking down the hallway of the Alamo Dome before a Spurs game, when I'm writing like third sidebars for Johnny Ludden and Buck Harvey and Glenn Rogers, Tom Orsborn, and this kid in glasses says, "Hey, Mike, how are you doing today? Read your story in the paper today." And I kind of said, "Thank you very much." I've strolled over to Johnny Ludden, our longtime Spurs beat writer for the Express News, who now runs Yahoo Sports.
The world. He runs the world.
He runs the world. I said, "Johnny, there's this kid in glasses out there who is like wearing a suit." And he said that he read like my sidebar that was on page 12 of the sports section today. And I'm just wondering who that is. And Johnny said, if that guy said hello to you, be nice to him because he's going to run an NBA team someday. And that's who it was. It was Sam Presti, who did run an NBA team, who won an NBA title. But he kind of learned at the school of the Spurs. He did things the Spurs way on how to build a team. And now he's kind of providing a template for the Spurs in return. Like, I think what the Spurs are doing this summer is exactly what Presti did with the Thunder 2-3 years ago when they had all these picks and their fans were ready for them to make a big move. And they decided to make 2 picks in the first round rather than trade them for veterans. And in one first round, I think with pick 2 and 12 or 2 and 13, something very similar to what the Spurs had yesterday, they took Chet Holmgren and Jalen Williams. And if 2 and 14 work as well as 2 and 12 did for the Thunder, I think Spurs fans are going to be really, really happy.
Yeah, you'd be onto something there.
Yeah.
I think that would fast forward the process a little bit if both those guys pan out.
The point I was trying to make is like the Thunder did not make the win now move really ever at any point. They did not chase the Kevin Durant.
Right.
Their additions were Isaiah Hartenstein and Alex Caruso. When they were ready to get over the top, those were the type of players that they added. And I think the Spurs will be a little more aggressive than the Thunder were, but that blueprint is there for patience and for step by step. And I think the Spurs are going to stick to that.
Yeah.
All that said, the Thunder were not in the playoffs 3 years ago, and now they're champion.
Right.
So it can happen faster than you think if you do it right.
Yeah, Brian, cliche warning here, but Brian, I asked him last night about how the big picture's coming together, and if this is how he envisioned it, working out, and how much closer they are to the playoffs. And he said, we're just putting one foot in front of the other, keeping our head down, and hopefully we look up someday and we're right where we want to be by not putting the cart before the horse.
Yeah.
And I think that sums up what you just said, Mike. And in his own words, that's how he's putting it.
I appreciate the cliche warning there because there were like 9 of them.
Right. He had 3 in a row, but I mean, that's basically what he's saying. No short-term fix. Do it methodically. Don't skip steps like Pop has said over and over again. I mean, they're following. They've been very, very disciplined with following that plan.
Tom does a great job for many years, he did a great job of transcribing every interview, and he would do it with headphones and do it word by word. And it was meticulous, and his coworkers really appreciated it. And now with technology, there's applications that can kind of do it automatically, and Tom cleans it up and makes sure that every word is right. But did you notice Tom sent me the
I know where this is going. I think
the transcript of the Brian Wright interview last night, and the cliche that Tom just used. It was not putting the cart before the horse.
Yeah.
Did you see what the cart was ahead of, Tom, in that transcript?
I'm trying to find it here. Yeah. Oh yeah. The hearse. Yeah.
The cart. Now, don't put the cart in front of the hearse.
Now I had to get those,
which also you should not do. I don't think you should do that either. Put the cart.
I had to get those quotes to Jeff quickly so he could get back from Brooklyn to his hotel. So didn't have time to clean it up too much.
I kind of understood where he was going for, what he was going for there. So it didn't confuse me. It was horse.
Put hearse in the newspaper.
I didn't put hearse in the newspaper. I think that should be the new cliche though. Maybe we can
don't put the car before the hearse.
Yeah. I like it.
Jeff mentioned that with the Thunder thing that the titles can come quicker than you think, and that's true. 3 years ago they weren't in the playoffs, and now they are. But I had some fans are really ready for this, and some fans have high expectations. And in the newspaper a couple of weeks ago, I think I was writing about the Kevin Durant idea, and I had a line in there about how even if Kevin Durant comes here, the Spurs aren't going to win a title next year. And I had a reader email, a very thoughtful reader. Love all the readers who take the time to send the old-fashioned emails saying, how could you say that? Like how could a team with how could you say that a team with Victor Wembanyama and Kevin Durant not expect to win a title in year one? That would be unprecedented. But it's just it does not happen that fast. There's no way that the Spurs are going to win a title next year. I'm sorry if that's breaking news to some people, but it just does not happen in the history of the league. Like it doesn't, you don't go from out of the playoffs to a champion when nobody on your roster really has any postseason experience, has won a playoff series. Like Harrison Barnes might be it. De'Aaron Fox hasn't won a playoff series yet. Nobody else has been in the playoffs. You need to go step by step. Yeah. Some cliches are cliches for a reason. And
how could a team with Devin Booker and Kevin Durant not make the playoffs last year?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And so when you understand what the steps are, that the first step, I'm sorry to be blunt, but the first step for Victor is to get into the playoffs and lose and sort of be embarrassed and sort of realize all the ways that he needs to improve. Like adding Kevin Durant to the mix next year was not going to change that. Like that team still needed to get to the playoffs and lose. You look at the Thunder. They needed to get to the playoffs one year. Weren't they the number one seed a year ago too?
Correct.
They had their regular season breakthrough where they looked like the best team in the Western Conference. That team that was number one in the Western Conference had to take its postseason lumps, and understandably, like all those guys, Shea Gilgeous Alexander, Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren, they had to get to the playoffs and lose first. The Spurs are going to do that. You know who else? Who was surrounded by veterans who had been through many, many postseasons, like dumped into the perfect position. Another guy who had to go to the playoffs and lose his first time was Tim Duncan. Like Tim Duncan had to go to the playoffs, and I think they lost to the Jazz his rookie year.
Yes.
It's just not, and he had David Robinson and Sean Elliott and Avery Johnson and a great team around him. It's just unrealistic to think that you can skip that step. Victor says it all the time, like Tom said. Greg Popovich said it all the time. You cannot skip certain steps. And so this Spurs team is on track to get to the playoffs next year and lose, and it'll be great because that's exactly what they need to do. That's what the Rockets did last year. They got to the playoffs as the number 2 seed. Were sort of humbled by not being ready for it, because how could they have been ready for it? And now they're ready to take a different step next year, which is why they were a better fit for Durant. And I think that what the Spurs are doing now makes total sense. You get to the playoffs next year, you lose, and then maybe you could add more pieces next year, ones that fit specific needs. And I want to get into the rest of the Spurs offseason too. I'm not saying that they're done. But I just thought that was worth reminding everyone about the steps and the dumb cliches that are cliches for a reason. Anything to add on that, Jeff? I know you got a plane to catch.
No, I think you're spot on. And I think if anybody watched the finals, it's a different game than the regular season. It's the intensity level is up. And I'm not talking about like the pressure is up, obviously, and the fans are loud, obviously, but the actual game on the floor, everybody is playing every possession like their lives depended on it. And you watch the Thunder play, and it's like hand-to-hand combat, and it's officiated differently. You can beat the crap out of people in the playoffs sometimes, and you're just not ready for that. And a young player, a young team is not ready for that until they've actually been hit in the mouth a few times. So they've got to go there and just get their butts kicked by it to know what it's all about. And so that is the next step for this team. And that's kind of how the Spurs are approaching it. That's why they are not shoving all their chips into the middle of the pile to go get Kevin Durant or to go get Kristaps Porzingis. I don't think that would have cost all their chips, but anyway.
No.
What's the latest?
Well, they would have taken Porzingis. Like there was legitimate interest there.
Yeah.
Like if you're just going to give him away, sure.
That's kind of what
like a huge priority.
That's kind of what the Spurs are looking for from those deals right now. If you're just going to give them away, we'll help. But if it costs us anything we care about, then we're not really all that interested right this second. And it's because there's still steps to cover before they're ready to be like, all right, we're shooting for the finals this year. This is our championship window is now officially open. They still got some steps to cover before they're there. And so 2 years from now, whoever the Kevin Durant is from 2 years from now, the Spurs might be way more amenable to giving up stuff for that. But the timing's not right because they've got steps to cover.
Tom, you were trying to break in there.
Oh, I was just it's kind of past the point of saying it, but I'll say it anyway. It reminded me of we were talking about the playoffs, the finals, the intensity, and just brought to mind Chris Paul late last season. When I asked him about Devin Vassell playing well down the stretch and Chris Paul keeping it real like he always did. He had a little chuckle and said, "Man, you got to remember this isn't the real NBA."
It's true.
His point was so. I mean, he was so spot on in saying that. It's so different in the playoffs.
But you remember his advice to Steph Castle: go watch.
Yeah, yeah,
in person.
exactly. Yeah.
And even then, Chris said you still don't get the full effect without playing in it, but at least being there on the front row and seeing just how everything is ramped up is helpful. And I don't know if Steph made it to a game or not. We'll have to ask him the next time we see him. And you brought up Chris. I guess we're gonna miss him. I think it's been pretty clear, but just in case people are wondering, I don't see him coming back now that the Spurs have drafted yet another point guard. So
well, to segue into that, that leaves, the way I have it counted, I believe there are 12 spots filled for sure on a 15-man roster. Now that the 2 first rounders are penciled in there, that leaves 3 spots to fill, and you figure one of them they have a mid-level exception to use, where you can go after somebody, probably a big man that people might know, a high to medium profile type of guy. I'm not sure they're going to be able to get a Brook Lopez or Clint Capella, which is one of the names I hear from fans that they're really interested in. Like that, though, both of those guys would be great. I'm not sure that would happen. I'm going to throw out a name that is not of that level, and just a guess, and a guy I think who would really fit here is young Gershon Yabusele.
yes,
who I watched I watched in Paris a couple of summers ago. If people who watched the Olympics remember, and not just the championship game, but the whole 2 weeks where Team France was kind of struggling at times, and young Victor Wembanyama was kind of struggling at times. Yabusele, for long stretches, was the best player on the floor.
Yeah.
Like he was a bad man. And he's not going to be a dominant NBA big man. He's sort of undersized. He's not going to be a starter. But I know Victor loves him, and I know the Spurs have a lot of respect for him. And if that can be done, I think he'd fit in great to get another Frenchman alongside.
That would solve a little bit of your toughness issues on the front court. I mean, he's a really physical dude. I remember the game he played for the Sixers against the Spurs in San Antonio, just beat them up. So yeah, and you saw him in the Olympics, and I came out of that game against the Spurs this summer, or that season, going, yeah, that's the kind of guy they need. That's the kind of guy that's attainable. But you don't think Brook Lopez would give his old college teammate Mitch Johnson?
That's the factor there. Like this, I think, I don't know if we have a capologist on the show right now, but I think the mid-level exception is something like 14 million, and Brook might want more than that. But he played with Spurs coach Mitch Johnson at Stanford alongside big man Taj Finger, by the way. I remember wrote something about back in the day when Stanford was in the NCAA tournament. I covered that team for a day. But no, that would be cool. Yeah. Brook Lopez, I don't think had his best year last year. I think his 3-point percentage slipped a bit. His overall number slipped a bit. But to be a backup for Victor, like that's exactly what the Spurs would be looking for. And maybe Brook will cut his old teammate some slack and give him a deal.
I mean, all the buckets that Mitch Johnson set Brook Lopez up for in college, and basically made him a lottery pick, right? Like with all the assists and all the
exactly.
Brooks got to pay it back, I think.
I think that would be. I think and this I've read that the Rockets have pushed hard for Brooks in the past and might still be pushing hard for them. Although they just re-signed Steven Adams, so I don't know if there's overlap there. But that would be a perfect type guy. Any other guesses on the free agent market? We'll meet again.
You cut ties with Charles Bassey, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know the future of Charles Bassey. I don't think he's going to be a priority.
No, I'm saying I'm not saying he's a priority by any means. I'm just saying.
I'm not saying that you are either. I'm sorry, Tom. But I think that there's probably a spot where you figure they have 3 open spots now. You use one or two of them on like a Brook Lopez type, like a Yabusele type. Right. And then maybe that last one, hopefully, I'm keeping my fingers crossed. No rooting on the podcast. Yeah. No rooting the press box.
I know what you're going to say.
No rooting on press row. You're not supposed to care, but please bring back Sandro. Like just for my own sanity, just for our own sanity, as someone in there to get you through an 82 game season of covering the NBA, to have a guy who just seems happy to see you. I show up to the arena. Tom's never happy to see me. Jeff is never happy to see me.
No, I'm actively unhappy to see you.
Exactly. Michael C. Wright's never happy to see me. None of the
Coyote's
press
never
contingent
happy
is happy to see me. Mitch Johnson's not happy to see me.
Coyote is
Sandro always pretended to be happy to see me. So bring the guy back. The fans love him. Come on, bring Sandro back.
Here's what I'm going to say. I think if they have the spot, if there's not a clear other thing they should do with the roster spot, I think he'll be back.
I hope so.
I think he's the type of guy you bring back if you can.
And he's the ideal 15th man too. I
Yes.
mean, at a vet minimum, like you don't have to play him. When he plays, he's a joy to watch. Works hard in practice. I should be Sandro's agent.
You can give him a little more than the minimum too if you want.
Yeah.
if he comes back, Dylan Harper better watch his wheels.
Oh.
Well, I know Jeff is trying to get out of New York City, to get back to San Antonio for an introductory press conference with Dylan Harper and Carter Bryant this weekend. We will talk about that the next time we see you. We will talk about free agency the next time we see you. There should be some agreements in place, maybe a trade. Until we see you next time, take care of each other and keep it real.